Hey, future self. It's been a weird couple days. I wound up taking a 2-day vacation from the Wellbutrin instead of just a one. And I'm starting to wonder if I need to play with that half-life a little more seriously. Medications have... So, not just medications. Medications are made out of chemicals, so... especially compounded chemicals that we can kind of be more certain of. Compounded chemicals usually they have a pretty, I won't say simple, but they have like a formulary. They have a formula. So compounded chemicals have like a recipe. We know what's in them. We know, even if we don't know everything about, the ingredients and how they work, at least they're written down so it can be replicated. If nothing else, these compounded chemicals at least are easier to study, I guess, is all I'm trying to say. Some consistency there. When we study something like bupropion, I'd say a number and it would be wrong, but the half-life is the amount of the chemical that is at half of that chemical is still left in your body at this time. And we take that into account when we talk about titration and tapering, like I was babbling about the other day. Everybody's metabolism, everybody's, rate of osmosis, it's all going to be different to some, we vary. There are going to be variables in any set of data. So that's true of half-lives and chemicals inside of the human body. I feel like I need to play with it a little bit more. It takes 3 or 4 days for me to get up to dose. So maybe it takes, I don't know, not just one day of skipping a dose to have a desired effect. Took one yesterday after skipping 2 days. I also misspoke when I talked about what day of my cycle I'm on with no bleed. I think now I'm on day 23. I think the day I said that it was it was day 21. Anyway, I'm about a week out from my if I do bleed, my next bleed. I don't know if I'm going to. Another reason why estrogen is super important is that you pee your pants a lot. Like bladder control becomes a huge issue. I don't exactly understand the chemical hormonal connection there, or if it has something to do with, because reproductive hormones are all down there with the urinary tract, so why not, I don't know if it's this is rubbing up against that or that, but more metaphorical. And I've been having issues with that the last couple days. So we've established that if I have ovulated, then I'm not responding to progesterone the way that a body would, for whatever reason. And now that I'm in the part of my cycle where that's really going to be tapering off, I feel like I am switching gears, and whether that's because of that or the Wellbutrin, I do feel different. I feel like my body's wanting estrogen, but I'm peeing my pants just constantly. And yesterday, I was doing house chores and cleaning litter boxes and sweeping the floors and doing laundry and scrubbing stuff. Did some water changing in the. So I mean, I wasn't like working, but I fiddled around the house, and I just felt like I was having chest pains the whole time. I'm out of my mineral supplement, so I had just a plain old potassium, 550 microgram. I can't remember. Took some potassium, drank a shit ton of water. My heart still doesn't feel right this morning. And I peed my pants all night, and just was up and down and did not sleep well. Every time I woke up, it was just this angry, like, denial that I had to pee. My body will wake me up and ask to pee, and I'll say no, and I'll just lay there for 45 minutes in denial that I have to, just telling myself I can go back to sleep. I finally get out of bed, and I'm pissed. Go take a whiz. I don't know what my brain was playing with while I was away, but I don't feel like I was having sweet dreams. I don't remember dream content, and I haven't. I think I quit before I think that quit before I went to rehab, and that was in 2017. But I do have kind of a feeling when I wake up that I think is a residual from whatever the content of my dreams were. I just don't feel like I was having some sweet dreams. Wish you guys could see the Corys this morning. They're so active. I know a guy that likes to talk about other people's bodies and how other, and he'll say, oh gosh, you smoke so much weed, you'll wake up high or whatever. It's funny. It's kind of sad. It's just screaming from the rooftops how little you know about the body. It's like the grown woman who's reproduced. She's raised a child who believes that both kidneys are still, you're born with them still stacked up on one side of the body. Making these big, broad assertions. I mean, the chemical half-life of THC is not the same as how we store the byproduct of what that THC or the other cannabinoids, how they behave in the body. Because, like, what we do when we spy on somebody's pee, for example, or if we take their hair, like if we if we take their genetic material and we do a drug test, we're not looking for THC. We're looking for a byproduct, and that's what is stored in the fat. So the actual half-life, so like how long that chemical does its thing and how long it takes it for half of it to to be removed from the body. Because remember, there's that threshold, there's that therapeutic dose of, and that's going to vary with medications, whether it's THC or Wellbutrin. And not so much with Wellbutrin. There's a bit of a buffering thing. Anyway, but you're going to find that therapeutic dose. And that has a half-life. So that you had to meet that threshold. And then when it's at its half point, you're not getting that effect anymore. So even something like THC that does stay in the system for a long time, and its byproduct stays in the system for even longer, it just doesn't, you're not going to wake up still high unless you didn't sleep for very long. I realize that the metabolism slows down quite a bit when we sleep, but it doesn't shut off. there are other things that you're not even considering. It's just showing your lack of curiosity. Things like, for example, I don't have enough estrogen in my body. Waking up is affected by that. And trying to sleep through a night is affected by that. So when I wake up, yeah, I act pretty damn doofy. I act pretty influenced, but I'm not until I am. I don't like that that's okay in our culture to just make these broad assertions without any qualification, and to feel okay about that because you're a morally superior being and you can be trusted making choices. Whereas somebody who's an addict, for example, or somebody who has a non-verbal communication style, like, we're just going to go ahead and assume that because they're different, we're going to call them out in some way. But the morally superior ones are the ones who are allowed to do that. I watched a story on PBS on their news station a couple nights ago. It's taken me a while to chew on it. They're interviewing this guy who starts talking about how stupid the okay boomer rhetoric is, or like how dumb it is to even talk about it. Oh, but wait, he wrote a book about it. So it's dumb to talk about, but here, read my book. And it is dumb to talk about, because when we're saying okay boomer, we're not blaming baby boomers for the problems of the world. At the end of that interview or that discussion, the statistic, so like the raw bit of data that popped up on the screen, said that baby boomers own 72% of the country's wealth. So whether we're going to point fingers about who's to blame for why we exploit the planet for resources and how that's a crisis now, is the boomers' fault. If we want to talk about why wealth inequality is the boomers' fault, whatever. It's stupid. Sure, it's their fault. I don't know how Gen X got off the hook, though, because it's Gen X's fault, too. Because they let it go on. And baby boomers inherited this shit from their elders. And a lot of those boomers marched. A lot of those boomers gave us things like Earth Day. Like, they gave us this highly marketable, they had to put these ideas in terms that their elders could stomach. And a lot of their elders couldn't stomach what they were doing. So they gave us this commercialized version of a better, like, they kind of pointed into the direction. Well, Gen X just kept bottom feeding. Like, this is why trickle down economics is like it's a pipe, like, it's, you guys are more high than I am if you think trickle down economics is something that it works or can happen in an economy and in a society of humans where there is going to be corruption, there is going to be nepotism. It doesn't, you can't have humans doing this system and not have corruption. So in a perfect world, I don't, the Republicans are the most naive people I've ever heard of if they think that that these systems, like there is that the free market is a thing that can happen, first of all, and that trickle down economics. I don't know who came up with that sitting on the toilet and decided that that was going to be what we would use. That we would base like our emotional cognitive bias on this idea that we have to prop up this economy. So that's the problem. I mean, the problem is every generation. So whether the millennials or whatever generation they're blaming for the okay boomers phenomena, like when the generation after us wakes up and starts looking at us and looking around, they're going to blame us. Like we're going to be tomorrow's boomers. Because we just let it continue. And do you know how easy it would be to have, I don't know what they're calling it now. It was universal basic income. Now I think they're calling it guaranteed income. But do you know how easy it would be to just make up a bunch of money and tax it as you hand it to every citizen of the United States? Do you know how much profit would come off of that? Oh, but Alicia, you can't just make up money. Yes, absolutely you can, baby. That's what our money is. We don't have a gold standard anymore. I can't remember what it's called, but our money has value in the US because I said so. Google it. What is our currency worth? What is our currency backed by? It's not gold, honey. So I just you won't see that happen, I don't think, in my lifetime. Please prove me wrong. It's too simple, it's too easy, it's too straightforward. We have to say things like trickle down. But the wealth is not even trickling down to the next generation. It's not even in Gen X's hands. The baby boomers boomed. They bought their houses at 20-something for $50,000. And they're sitting on it, honey. And they're making the choices, they're calling the shots, and they don't feel guilty for any of it. Because somebody that they went to school with maybe sat at a sit-in at lunch while they were at college. They were social justice warriors. So yeah, it's a stupid discussion to even say, like, is it the boomers' fault? Because yes, of course it fucking is. But it's Gen X's fault, and it's the millennials' fault. It's especially the millennials' fault for, like, we're the generation who's being handed this information that autism is real, being differently brained is real. The human body is the next frontier. We're being handed this glorious information. What does it mean to be differently brained? Do we take that into account? What does it mean to raise your hand and admit, I don't know everything there is to know about the human body, even though there's an MD after my name? We're the generation who's stirring that shit up into the water and just continuing to punch the fucking time clock. And when I say you're exploited, I'm not saying like, oh, what you're a slave, you're not getting anything in return, and that paycheck means nothing. I understand blood is money. I understand that paycheck means something to you. But look at who's giving it to you. Look at the income gap. And I'm not talking to a shit ton of privately owned, jobs that come from privately owned small businesses in America. Because the economy eats those for breakfast. Big fish, little fish, big fish, little fish analogies don't just work for the stock market. So, I mean, McDonald's wants to tell you that they have to pay you some shit wage, just enough They want to pay you some shit wage because that's what their business model is based on. They're not going to have that $2 cheeseburger. They're not going to have that profit margin. So, I mean, forget, we don't want to talk about what the shareholders get or like what the point of having the business alive is, actually. We don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about sustaining the business model so that you have a job tomorrow, so that we can continue to pay you just enough to stay stuck. Because employee retention is important. I don't care what business it is. And that's one of those words where like human resources, HR, you think human resources, you think those words and it's like, wow, resources are good. I'm a human. I like humans. Those are both good things. That's my friend. And they want you to think that, when you're first getting into the job place, when you're a young person, HR is your buddy. But then you get wise, and for me it took way too long. HR is the place that you do not ever want to have anything to do with. If you have anything to do with HR, it means you're bad. It's these kinds of, it's like this gotcha mentality. Like everything we do is this complicated sideways. Like, look over there while I do this penis showing game. I don't get it. I'm over it, I guess. Like, and it's not so much that like, yeah, I'm not as grateful as I know I should be, or I'm not as grateful as I'd like to be as often as often as I'd like to be. But the same holds true. I'm not supportive of just the moral bullshit that backs everybody's people can just justify the most despicable, like, assumptive, judgmental behavior and thinking on like what they think is right, or and many times they came up with that because it's what their grandma told them, and the only reason why they hate this other person or this other person's choice or this whatever ideology that happened to tickle that person's brain, like the only reason they hate it is because that person's grandma said something different. I mean, Alicia, why can't you just figure out money? I did. And that's when we say okay boomer, we're saying okay honey, your worldview is obsolete. I don't know how to continue this conversation. So, when you say okay to somebody, you're done. Like, you don't, that's a non-answer. Okay is a non-answer. You're not continuing the conversation. You're ending it. And that's all we're saying. We're saying that you're checked out. You've got your wealth. You're good. You're okay. Okay, boomer. Like I said, I don't know how Gen X got off the hook, but, I guess, like, you're next, and while we're chewing on Gen X, millennials, warm up your emo records and, I don't know, self-harm toolkit. Because they're on their way. Unless we wake the hell up. Anyway, all of this psychobabble is just a great big PSA for estrogen. Everyone is probably diagnosing me with too much cannabis. It'll throw off your hormones, Alicia, you stupid person. Thank you. Keep that in mind. countdown is on, though. About to be remembering my last period. I was driving home from the grocery store and had to pull over. It took a really long time getting home because people kept crawling up my ass, and I had to pull over and let them by. I couldn't I couldn't go fast enough because like I was in such pain. I max out with my cramps, and I've been what is it, ultrasounded and x-rayed, and around the time that the postcoital bleeding was happening and the IUD came out, we did all kind of stuff. And then before I think it went in, I think we did wanted to make sure everything was cool. I found out a while ago I have like a tilted or like an angled uterus. Cracks me up. Retroverted. But everything's there. Everything's fine. The last pelvic ultrasound we did, she just said my ovary, like the follicles were a little immature because it was where I was in my cycle. Probably actually because there wasn't any estrogen in my body, but they didn't know that yet. And what I'm getting at is that there's no endometriosis that anyone can find. So it's sometimes we just have maxed out pain experiences that don't need surgery, don't need, fix-it medication, don't need corrective medication. It needs comfy meds. That's what the weed is. And I know it plays with other things. That's why I do it. And you can tell me that it plays with the wrong things and I'm doing it wrong, but until you're living in this body with me, or at least curious enough to study it properly, you don't get to say that. Corys are so active today. I did a big water change yesterday, and I was hoping it dropped the temperature in the tank, but I don't see any squishy egg looking things in there today, so maybe they're not old enough. These Corys are pretty tiny. I think these ones can get a couple inches in length, and mine are just little, so I may not be old enough to be thinking about that stuff yet. I'm gonna make it rain guppy food. Anyway, just gonna drink this tea. It's hard not to make the funny heart feeling worse by noticing the heart feeling. I know it's a need being expressed, a need that I'm unaware of yet. But when I put my finger on it, when I acknowledge that it's being spoken, that need, it gives me double panic, because just the sensation I feel in my chest and in my heart is really awful. I mean, it's not like, stopping me in my tracks, but it's very distressing. It's not how your heart is supposed to feel. But I'm remembering back, I've felt it before. It's been a while, and I haven't felt it that often, but I have been here before, and I got through it. So I'm sure I'll survive. Just adjusting to the fluctuations and the hormonal tides of my anatomy. Mornings are hard sometimes.